Hello, everybody. How you doing? Hopefully, you're having a nice weekend. The time on the weekends is just so important to my trading process. It's really for two reasons. One, without the noise of the daily markets, you can kind of take a step back and look at all your open positions, see if there's any risks there you might have missed throughout the week. Evaluate your stop areas to see if they're still appropriate, etc. And two, I really get my game plan together for the next week. So what that entails for me is just going through tons and tons of charts and trying to identify the ones that I like the best and that look the most actionable for the next week. Maybe they're actionable immediately, or maybe they're very close to being actionable. But it allows me to get this focused list together, and then most of the trades that I make each week come from this focused list that I gathered together on the weekend. So it's a really important time for me in my process. So in the video today, I'm going to go through just a number of names that are setting up nicely coming into next week. So here's the SPY S&P 500 ETF. It's obviously had a very strong move all this month, but to me, it's not out of the woods yet. This uptrend line from January 09, we're just right below that. And I've mentioned a number of times over the last couple of months, we've had this bearish MACD cross here on the monthly chart. When that's happened in the past, it's always been important. Obviously, we have these big ones here in 2000, 2008, where the market went down a lot. But even these little ones here, 2011, 2015, at a minimum, it's meant a pause in six to 18 months of not making new highs in the market. So we have that here. We've had a strong January. I'm still taking long positions if they're setting up appropriately. But overall, the indexes still don't look out of the woods to me. We're still below, declining or flattish 200-day moving averages. So, not out of the woods yet. Still the potential, I think, for the indexes to roll over. But there's just a lot of good-looking charts out there and individual names. So, too good for me to pass up on the long side for a lot of these lately. So, these are all long ideas here that I'm going to go through today. First one here is MMYT, Make My Trip. So I was watching this one, kind of a bottoming process here. It's been going on for the last few months. Announced earnings last Thursday, broke above this we'll call it $27. You can see it acted as support here, was resistance here, resistance here, resistance here. Didn't quite get there in January, but kind of acted as resistance. And you see Thursday, it broke through it. Friday gave some back in the morning and closed well above that level. So this is one I actually entered at the end of the day, Friday. Kind of a tightish stop, not too tight, but just below that yellow bar for me. But this one still looks actionable into next week, so I wanted to include it here in the video. Obviously, there's been so many software stocks that look good. My buy list is filled. I probably have 10 to 15 software stocks on there. A lot of them have earnings coming up. I try not to buy right before earnings, but when there's that many stocks in a group that look good, sometimes it's a nice option to take a look at the ETFs here. So this is PSJ Invesco Dynamic Software Portfolio ETF, and you can see this level here around $81 was resistance here and here, resistance again early December, broke above it last week and just kind of been consolidating right there. And then Friday pushed above it nicely. So above this $81 level, I think this ETF deserves some consideration on the long side. It has a lot of strong names in it, and you get away from kind of the earnings report risk, not entirely, but some of that you might have with an individual stock. So if the group's moving nice, sometimes a nice option is to have an ETF, and this one's looking pretty darn good here, PSJ. Next one here, EXAS. This one looks like a potential breakout candidate above 82 or so. You can see that area has been resistance here back into the fall, early December resistance, and it's right up against there right now after consolidating just below. So we'll see if this one can push through 82, $83 or so. This looks like a nice potential long in my eyes as well. Keep an eye on the earnings dates this time of year. This one reports earnings 2/28, so that would be far enough out for me to initiate a position here. I don't like to carry full positions into earnings reports, but I like to sell. Like ideally, if I buy something, it moves up for a couple weeks, and I sell half or so for the gains. I would hold the other half then if I'm still up in the position. It's acting nicely through the report. So this one has enough time that it would allow me to do that. So this is on my list for next week. EXEL, full disclosure, I did take a position in this one late last week as well, but it's still very actionable here. Has this 2250 or so level was resistance all these times going back to last year. Resistance more recently here. You could see it hit that level here in December, came back down, finally broke above it, and then kind of consolidated right right back into it, and it started pulling up above it. So when it starts hitting that level that has potential to act as support or resistance, once it does that, so it has potential here, and it digs in and it shows that it is going to act as support, then that's when that triggered the buy for me. So this one still looks good. Put your stop right below the yellow or below last week's low. So a nice defined risk there in EXEL. Another biotech stock here, ONCE, kind of working on a bottom potentially. There's been a lot of shares traded. You can see here a lot of shares traded, around $42, $43, and you can see this level was support, here in the fall, turned into resistance then in late November, December, and just kind of consolidating right there. So not ready to buy quite yet, but if this one starts pulling off of this $44 level next week, this would I'd consider this one for a long with a stop just below the yellow. Starbucks, I'll look at the weekly chart here. Just a beautiful, you could see this area of $64 or so. This goes back to 2015 was resistance. 2017 resistance, finally broke through it here. And then it kind of dipped down below it a little bit, but now it's well back above it. Earnings are out of the way, just reported. In the daily chart here, this kind of downtrend line, this consolidation from last fall, Friday closed above it. So if this one can hang out here, stay above 67, 68, start pulling up, I like Starbucks quite a bit here, mostly based on the action on that weekly chart. I like it a lot. Deere, another big cap name here. This has this level around $160 that was resistance back in the late spring, early summer, again back in the fall, broke through it and then quickly went right back underneath it there in December. And now it's kind of starting to establish itself above this $160 level. So this one's definitely on my list. If it starts pulling up and away from that, that would consider a long entry from me in Deere. Earnings 215 on that one. Still have a couple of weeks. SID, kind of similar to Deere, same idea, has this 275 or so. It was resistance all these times going back to early spring, resistance again in the fall, hit it again, had a slight dip. A lot of times before something is ready to break through a big level, you'll see it won't pull back as much as it does. It just had this slight dip here, came right back to it. So if this one can move above 275 or so, this would get my attention on the long side as well. Last one I'll go through here is JD. Kind of similar to ONCE, a lot of these making a potential bottom here, but the key thing is you have this, you have your risk defined area to trade off of. So right here, that's about $22. You can see it act as support here, then it broke below it. What was support turned resistance in December here. You can see it resistance, then it just kind of broke above it. And just right here, just still trading in that range. Friday had a nice big move up about 7%, kind of pulling away from that. So if that continues to pull away next week, I think this looks like a attractive long candidate as well. So those are just a few that I'm watching. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you're interested, check out ttptrading.com. Myself and CJ Agresta, we 30-day free trial, so you can have enough time to kind of see what it's all about in that month. So feel free to contact either of us with questions. Hope you guys all have a great weekend and a great week next week, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.